with the strict caveat there would be absolutely no immigration enforcement involved. Despite SFPD's official policy, while Santini kept quiet about it during the pre-op briefing, he was holding the immigration enforcement option in his back pocket. He had a bigger plan than just the mission possible brewing in his mind. If hooking and booking the MS-13 crew on immigration charges could somehow further a potentially larger criminal case against them, he was determined to use HSI's enforcement authority. Recently, he had run across an article published in the FBI's law enforcement bulletin titled Enterprise Theory of Investigation, which succinctly laid out how to apply the federal RICO statute designed to systematically dismantle a criminal network. The RICO approach had been used effectively by the FBI against the Gambino crime family, by the DEA against the Colombian Cali cartel, and by the ATF against the Hells Angels outlaw motorcycle gang. A successful RICO case usually entailed close cooperation between federal and state or local law enforcement, attacking a criminal organization at every possible level of its structure, with the goal of taking down its leaders. Instead of treating criminal acts as isolated crimes, the enterprise theory of investigation attempted to demonstrate that the targeted individuals committed crimes in furtherance of the criminal enterprise itself. Implementing the investigative attack plan for a RICO case often took a relatively long time, a luxury that local police, who were constantly reacting to 911 calls, didn't have, but Santini did. He knew MS-13 was providing difficult for the local cops to combat, largely due to the gang's insularity as a Spanish-speaking criminal subculture. SFPD cops, constrained by the city's sanctuary city policy, were practically fighting the gang with both hands tied behind their backs. The most common strategy for criminal investigators to take down a gang entailed flipping inside informants in exchange for money or lessened sentences. SFPD's gang task force had succeeded in arm-twisting small bits of intelligence from a few desperate 20th Street members here and there over the years, but the local cops were clearly losing the war. To defeat the gang in San Francisco, it would take a much more prolonged and better resourced attack, which was precisely what Santini intended to do, with whatever help he could muster from SFPD. In developing the plan for Mission Possible, Cabrera and Gibson had provided Santini with the target list of a couple dozen known 20th Street members, as well as several locations where gang members were known to loiter or post up to control turf, including Mission Dolores and Aledio Parks. Several of the clique members were also known to troll popular tourist areas such as Golden Gate Park and Fisherman's Wharf, picking wallets from pockets of distracted out-of-towners or snatching valuables such as cameras, sunglasses, and laptops from unattended cars. All the locations were included in the plan to drain the swamp in and around the Mission. In general, 20th Street members controlled their turf in Mission Playground by posting up a constant presence at the park. But if they wanted a quick hiatus, they would sometimes take a walk along Mission Street or smoke some weed in one of their other nearby parks, loitering among the docile citizens enjoying the bay breezes or walking their dogs. The tendency of the clique to roam every which way through the neighborhood naturally complicated the job of netting them in one swoop. The operation commenced with a swarm of almost 60 SFPD cops, California DOJ agents, and HSI special agents split into small teams and simultaneously hitting the streets, alleys, and parks of the Mission, scouting for 20th Street members. Dressed in jeans, sneakers, and a t-shirt, Santini joined another HSI agent along with Cabrera, Gibson, and two plainclothes state cops, forming one of several cross-agency units participating in the sweep. It wasn't long before Santini's squad made their first contact with a group of gangbangers sporting their trademark Sureño blue clothing accessories, loitering in front of Jocelyn's El Salvadorian Bakery at Lexington and 20th Streets. Jocelyn's catered to Central Americans in the neighborhood with the foods they like, prepared the way it was done back home. Owned and operated by a Salvadorian family, the bakery was a favorite hangout for the 20th Street crew. The local cops knew the gang lingered here regularly, while a group of crooks often fenced stolen goods such as car stereos, ridiculously expensive decorative wheel rims and spinners, and other accoutrements of the well-equipped homies' gangster ride. In addition to grabbing a bite at Jocelyn's, the 20th Street clique, some of whom specialized in car theft, could turn a fast buck selling their spoils from the thefts and burglaries. Approaching the crew from 20th Street, Santini thought they looked shifty and dangerous. None of them seemed particularly concerned about the group of cops who were heading straight their way. The mostly young homies seemed slightly amused, making wisecracks to one another in Spanish, laughing and smiling cockily. They all sported gang colors with sports jerseys with the number 20 or 13 and blue belts, belt buckles molded in the number 20 and blue accents on everything. They even had MS-13 jewelry such as earrings that included blue MS letters. The elder of the group, Blackie, was a Salvadorian with a shaved head decked out in all blue, including blue laces in his Nike Air Jordans. He had a patch over his left eye, which he lost a few years ago in a knife fight, making him look like a seasoned gangster pirate. Blackie attempted to slide away inconspicuously down the street, while the others put on an ostentatious show of fearlessness, standing their ground in the face of police heat bearing down. "Hey," Gibson called to Blackie, "come here a minute." The homie stopped and turned, disgust crossing his face. He blew out a hiss of frustration and walked back toward the front of the bakery. The rest of the gang maintained their poses of contempt for the cops, meeting their gazes and glaring back with open scorn. Santini was struck by how thuggish they were. He had encountered plenty of mean hombres during his time with the Border Patrol, and to him, these guys were obviously hardcore street criminals, especially Blackie. "Let me see some ID," Gibson told Blackie, while keeping an eye on the others, who were boxed in by SFPD officers as well as Santini and his HSI partner. Blackie reached into his jacket pocket and extracted a driver's license. He handed it to Gibson, who scanned it briefly and passed it over to Santini, who in turn gave the ID to his partner to run a check. "Hold tight right there," Gibson told Blackie as he moved down the line to the next homie. "ID," Gibson said. Spanky, a portly thug with a 2 tattooed on one forearm and a 0 on the other, pulled out his wallet and removed a driver's license for Gibson, who eyeballed it closely. Something about it didn't look right. He handed it to a plainclothes California DOJ agent who was providing backup. The homie's confidence seemed to be fading under his unfamiliar protocol. They had been shaken down by SFP officers too many times to remember, but this was different. There were several cops they didn't recognize, and they were paying extra close attention to their IDs. "He's got a prior deport," Santini's partner told him after the check was done on Blackie's driver's license. "His immigration status is illegal." At the mention of immigration, spoken loud enough for the homies to hear, Santini watched the gangbangers' faces drop. In an instant, they went from mildly impatient and contemptuous to clearly worried. All the homies had jobs or girlfriends or children in the States, and the possibility of being deported would seriously screw up their lives. The cops in Honduras or El Salvador might want them for their felonies in their home countries. Even if they weren't arrested upon arrival and locked up for something, returning to the States to resume their lives in San Francisco could easily take several weeks, but more likely months, probably meaning they lose their jobs. A night in San Francisco County Jail was no problem, but a ticket home was a serious detriment. The original intent on Mission Possible was the way it was sold by Santini to the SFPD chain of command, was an intelligence gathering operation only. There was to be no enforcement of immigration laws. But busting these thugs was too tempting. Santini wanted them off the street immediately. "What do you think?" he said to Gibson. "Should I go ahead and lock them up? Their asses will be deported for sure. I promised to ask the U.S. Attorney's Office if they would consider a re-entry prosecution too. But at the minimum, they would be shipped." Gibson exchanged looks with Cabrera. Both knew it would cause some serious problems for them if word got out that SFPD was helping ICE to round up, detain, and deport illegals. Still, the gang task force officers were sick of the thugs running roughshod in the neighborhood. If HSI had a tool in their arsenal that could remove these menacing thugs from the neighborhood, both the citizens of the city and the police would benefit. Santini suggested that Cabrera and Gibson leave the gangsters with him and his HSI partners while the local cops continued patrolling the neighborhood. Cabrera and Gibson nodded in assent and headed toward the patrol car. After they pulled away, it was Santini's show. "Let's haul them in," he told his partner. They ran immigration checks on the rest of the homies outside of Jocelyn's. One turned out to be in possession of a fake green card, which was a deportable offense. Another admitted to being in the country illegally. In total, 5 of them were busted on illegal immigration charges and taken into custody by ICE. After shaking down the gang at the bakery and loading the 5 thugs into an ICE van, Santini reconnected with Gibson and Cabrera. They proceeded to execute a probation search at the residence of another 20th Street member named Maurice Montega, aka Gomillo, Spanish for fame. Gomillo was on probation for an assault charge stemming from an altercation with a rival gangster a year prior. He lived with his mother and some other family members in a 2-bedroom apartment a few blocks from Mission Playground. As the task force approached the apartment building, they spotted MS-13 graffiti painted all over the sidewalk out front, on the mailboxes, inside the entrance, and in the elevator on the way up to the 4th floor. Nobody answered the knock at Comillo's apartment door, so the SFPD team contacted a building manager who arrived shortly with the master key. Inside the residence was clean and well kept. Everywhere were testaments to Comillo's mother's Christian devotion, the numerous sacred icons and pictures of crucifixes. Multiple Virgin Marys decorated the living room walls and shelves. The search team went straight to Comillo's bedroom, which Gibson was familiar with from previous visits to the home. It was obvious as soon as they entered that Fang was hardcore MS-13. Gang paraphernalia was everywhere. There was a collection of blue bandanas, ball caps, belts, and sneakers, as well as letters to Comillo from various gang members in prison. There was also an aluminum baseball bat with the gang symbol scribbled on. There was also an aluminum baseball bat with the gang symbols scribbled in magic marker. A framed photo on the wall showed a couple dozen 20th Street members assembled in Mission Playground immediately after a murdered homie's funeral, all of them wearing gang blues. They were lined up in 3 rows as if in a soccer team photo, smiling and throwing up devil horn hand signs for the camera. Santini thought, these guys obviously feel like they own the neighborhood. On the nightstand was a photo of Comillo's inside. On the nightstand was a photo of Comillo inside a cheap frame bordered with crayon stick figures and smiley faces, and an inscription that read, "Me and my daddy." Comillo was holding his young son, flashing a proud smile and donned in his best MS-13 ceremonial blues. He held the boy in one arm while flashing the devil horn salute with the other. The baby was dressed in a Sureño blue onesie. Observing the father and son photo, Santini was struck by how it so clearly illustrated the tragedy of generational allegiance within the gang. Little boys grew up watching their fathers, uncles, cousins, and older siblings as role models, living the life of a marrero. Influenced so heavily from an early age, the odds were stacked high against the boys breaking the cycle of criminality. The kids were practically set up for failure. An SFPD cop gathered up Comillo's gang swag and spread it out on the bed to take photos as evidence of his parole violations. Meanwhile, Gibson rummaged through the furniture, and bingo, in the center drawer of a battered wooden dresser tucked under a pile of mismatched socks, he found a loaded black .45 caliber handgun with 2 boxes of ammunition. "I'm sure this hasn't been used in any crimes," Gibson cracked, wearing surgical gloves and holding up the gun for the others to see. They bagged and tagged the gun and gang paraphernalia, while Gibson called Comillo's mom to ask where her son was. She indicated he was working at a construction site in Daly City and would be home by 5 o'clock that afternoon. Gibson asked her to have Comillo give him a call and told her it was likely her son would be spending the night in the county jail for violating the terms of his parole. "He'll probably be out in a day or two," Gibson told Santini after hanging up with Comillo's mother. Gibson knew from years of frustrating experience with San Francisco's justice system, Comillo would be assigned a public defender and plead not guilty, claiming ignorance about the gun in his dresser drawer. Chances were high he would be granted bail and the DA would eventually drop the charges. For Santini and his HSI partners, observing the gang's criminal culture up close and personal during the Mission Possible operation provided a unique glimpse of San Francisco's underworld. It also served to focus their list of 20th Street members to target. But the only way to truly take apart the gang was from inside the ranks, Santini knew. And for that, he would need a reliable informant, a trusted marrero with access to 20th Street's network of thugs.